Um, Welcome to today's deep dive. We're getting into something today that I think is just, it's a fascinating paradox. So picture this. In 2007, Nokia had arguably the greatest engineers on Earth.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were completely unmatched at the time.
Right. And they had this incredibly efficient global supply chain. They controlled, I think it was a staggering 40% of the entire mobile handset market.
Which is just a massive monopoly.
Yeah, it's insane. They possessed the absolute best market intelligence that money could buy. They literally had a monopoly on mobile telecommunications knowledge. And yet, that exact unparalleled knowledge is precisely what killed them.
It sounds like a complete contradiction, doesn't it? I mean, we're taught from day one in pretty much every business school and corporate training session that information is your armor.
Right, like the more you know, the safer you are.
Exactly. The foundational assumption is always that the more data you have, the more insulated you are from failure.
But then, you look at the actual history of corporate giants or even just brilliant individuals, and that armor turns out to be more like a straitjacket. We're looking at a landscape where these incredibly smart, highly resourced organizations just keep getting utterly blindsided by the future.
Yeah, and that brings us perfectly to the source material for this deep dive, which is Govind Pathak's 2026 book, Matrix of Awareness: Strategic Thinking, Decision-Making, and Leadership in the Age of AI.
Which is just a fantastic read, by the way.
It really is. And Pathak makes this very compelling case that our obsession with accumulating knowledge is actually blinding us to a changing reality.
Which is such a weird concept to wrap your head around at first.
It is, but it's a vital distinction, especially right now. The core argument he presents is that in an age of artificial intelligence, the greatest danger is no longer ignorance. The greatest danger is the deeply held belief that we already understand enough.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we really need to start by dismantling that core assumption, right? The whole idea that having more information protects you from failure. So let's go back to Nokia.
Right, let's look at what actually happened there.
Because the traditional narrative is always, they just got lazy or they got complacent. But Pathak looks at it through a completely different lens. He says Nokia didn't fail because they lacked intelligence or talent or even technology. They failed because they were playing a hardware game, completely unaware that the world was shifting to a software and ecosystem game.
Yeah, and you have to remember, for decades, the entire mobile industry was defined by hardware excellence. I mean, better engineering, longer battery life, more efficient manufacturing, that's what created your competitive advantage.
Right, it's all about the physical phone.
Exactly, and Nokia had absolutely mastered the mechanics of that specific game. But what they failed to recognize was that the future of mobility was no longer about the physical device itself. It was becoming all about digital services, cloud infrastructure, app ecosystems, user experience.
It's like being the world's greatest master architect of physical bank vaults.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You're obsessing over the thickness of the steel and the complexity of the physical locks, making sure everything is perfect.
Right, making it totally impenetrable.
Exactly. Your walls are impenetrable, but you're completely ignoring the fact that the world just invented cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So you're building these incredible vaults, but the robbers are stealing the money through a Wi-Fi connection.
Wow. Yeah.
Your expertise is actually what blinds you.
Yeah.
Because you're so hyper-focused on the old rules of security that you can't even perceive the new reality of the threat.
That analogy maps perfectly to what happened, and Pathak distills this into a really powerful concept in the book. He says, knowledge explains the world as it is understood. Awareness explores the possibility that the world itself may be changing.
Oh, wow. So knowledge is knowing exactly how to build the perfect bank vault, but awareness is realizing the nature of money itself just changed.
Precisely. And he introduces this psychological framework for how organizations lose that awareness over time. He calls it the awareness drift model.
The awareness drift model, okay.
Yeah, it basically details how expertise literally hardens into rigidity. The psychological cascade works kind of like this. Success improves performance. Which makes sense, right?
Sure. You do well, you get better at it.
Right. Improved performance then increases confidence. But here's exactly where the drift begins. That high level of confidence begins to reinforce your foundational assumptions.
Because you look at your balance sheet and say, well, we made $1 billion this quarter, so our assumptions about the market must be 100% correct.
Exactly. And when those assumptions are constantly reinforced by financial success, they gradually reduce your curiosity.
Cool.
When a company stops being curious, it stops asking fundamental questions.
And if you're not asking questions, you're not seeing what's changing.
Right. The cessation of questioning develops blind spots,
Yeah.
and those blind spots create strategic vulnerability. So paradoxically, the very success of a company creates the exact psychological conditions for its future failure.
Oh, yeah.
Not because success itself is inherently bad, but because it actively discourages the habit of questioning the environment.
So every blind spot that eventually destroys the company
Mm.
basically begins as a highly successful assumption that leadership just, stopped challenging.
That's exactly it.
That is a terrifying thought. But it makes me wonder if accumulated knowledge and expertise actually create these fatal blind spots.
Yeah.
How did humanity get so obsessed with data and expertise in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, why is our default reaction to any uncertainty always, let's just gather more data?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the evolution of human knowing. Pathak traces this drive for data all the way back through history to show how our methods of understanding the world have shifted over time.
Okay.
So, more than 5,000 years ago, human understanding was primarily rooted in mythology.
And Pathak makes a point not to dismiss mythology as just primitive storytelling.
Right, not at all. It wasn't about scientific accuracy. It was a necessary psychological framework. People were seeking meaning and stability in a terrifying, deeply uncertain world.
Because nature is unpredictable and scary. So you need a story to make sense of it all.
Exactly. It provided crucial social cohesion. But then humanity evolved to philosophy, which introduced something truly radical to the human experience, which was the legitimacy of questioning.
Instead of just accepting the myths.
Right. Instead of simply accepting the established mythological narratives, early philosophers began asking what is actually true. They introduced the mechanism of inquiry.
Which eventually paves the way for science, right? Where observation, measurement, and experimentation replace pure philosophical speculation.
Yes. The scientific method gave us reliable, repeatable knowledge. I mean, it built the modern industrial world.
But science also introduced a pretty profound paradox.
It did. Because the more knowledge humanity acquired through the scientific method, the more complexity we discovered. Every time we answered one question, that answer generated 10 new, much more complicated questions.
Hey, we just kept seeking more and more data to deal with the complexity?
Yes, and this relentless pursuit of data brings us through the technological and digital eras, landing us right in our current reality, which he calls AI-driven knowing.
Which is where the entire paradigm basically breaks. Because for all of human history, through mythology, philosophy, and early science, knowledge was scarce.
Right.
If you wanted it, you had to work incredibly hard to find it, deduce it, or invent it.
It was a very resource-intensive process.
Exactly. But now we're dealing with what he calls the knowledge abundance paradox. In the AI era, knowledge isn't just everywhere. It is instantly accessible and practically free.
Which means knowledge is no longer the ultimate competitive advantage it once was. Awareness is. When every single company and individual has access to the exact same instantaneous AI-synthesized intelligence, the strategic advantage shifts entirely.
So it's not about who is the data anymore.
Right. The winner is now the person or organization that understands what they are missing, what signals the AI is ignoring, and what hidden invisible assumptions are actually shaping those outputs.
But wait a second, I really want to push back on this a little bit. Because if AI is doing all the heavy lifting of synthesizing all this massive complex data for us, shouldn't that make us less blind?
You would think so.
Yeah, I mean, if Nokia had a modern generative AI analyzing global market trends in 2007, shouldn't that system have protected them from falling into the hardware trap?
Well, what's fascinating here is that Pathak argues the exact opposite is true. The introduction of artificial intelligence actually accelerates the awareness drift model we just talked about.
Wait, really? How?
He calls this the confidence amplification effect. AI gives us a very dangerous illusion of understanding.
Oh, because it sounds so incredibly confident when it answers us.
Yes, exactly. Because AI generates these fast, beautifully formatted, highly authoritative sounding answers, it fundamentally short-circuits our natural human instinct to critically evaluate information.
We just sort of take its word for it.
We do. Imagine a board of directors sees a brilliant, perfectly synthesized AI forecast. Their perceived accuracy goes through the roof. That artificially inflates their confidence, which immediately reduces their collective questioning, which encodes hidden assumptions, and ultimately creates entirely new, highly sophisticated blind spots.
Wow. So the greatest risk of AI isn't even the hallucination problem or, that it might give us a mathematically incorrect answer. The greatest risk is our own excessive psychological confidence in machine-generated intelligence.
Yes, through real danger, yes.
We just blindly trust it, and in doing so, we bring all of its hidden biases, its historical limitations, and its total inability to perceive paradigm shifts right into the core of our strategy.
Because AI can accelerate the processing of knowledge, but it cannot eliminate fundamental uncertainty. It cannot navigate ambiguity. And it certainly can't tell you what your organizational ethical priorities should be or what unintended societal consequences a new product might face.
Because those are human problems.
Right, those are entirely awareness challenges. Believing that access to AI-generated knowledge automatically equates to true understanding is just the most dangerous assumption a leader can make today.
Okay, so if AI is just flooding us with an abundance of data and false confidence, how on earth do we filter this? I mean, if I'm a listener prepping for a major strategic overhaul or a big meeting, how do I process this massive information overload without just defaulting to whatever the algorithm spits out?
That's the big question. And it leads directly into Pathak's hierarchy of understanding. It's a vital cognitive filter to help separate the noise from actual strategic insight.
Okay, how does it work?
Pathak breaks this down into 5 distinct sequential levels: data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and awareness.
Let's walk through those because we really need to understand the mechanics of how a company actually moves from one level to the next. Let's use a real-world scenario. Let's imagine a mid-sized software company that is suddenly facing a massive crisis with customer retention.
Okay, that's a perfect scenario to map this out. Let's start at the absolute bottom of the hierarchy: data. The
Okay.
data is simply the raw material. It only answers the question, what happened? So in our scenario, the data is just an isolated metric. Customer churn is at 12%. It offers 0 context.
Right. If you just have data, you just have a spreadsheet of disconnected numbers. So to make it actually useful, you have to move up to information.
Exactly. Information answers the question, what does this mean? It's data organized into a context. So information tells you that customer churn increased by 50% immediately following a new pricing tier adjustment last month. Now you actually have a correlation.
But correlation still isn't a strategy. It brings us up to knowledge.
Right. Knowledge goes deeper and answers. Why did it happen? It explains the underlying relationships and market dynamics. So, knowledge reveals that the price increase caused your mid-market clients to migrate to a specific competitor who just launched a cheaper alternative.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this is traditionally where most corporate analysis stops.
But knowledge still isn't enough to actually fix the company, which brings us to wisdom.
Wisdom answers the critical question: what should we do about it? Wisdom integrates experience, market context, and historical judgment to apply that knowledge. Wisdom might dictate that you immediately roll back the pricing adjustment, or alternatively, that you launch a targeted loyalty campaign to retain the remaining mid-market clients.
And for decades, wisdom was considered the absolute peak of leadership.
It was the goal, yeah.
But Pathak argues that in an era of rapid disruption, even wisdom falls short. The true peak is awareness.
Yeah.
And awareness steps back from the immediate problem and answers the most critical question of all. Are we even asking the right question?
This is where the paradigm truly shifts. In our scenario, wisdom tries to fix the churn. Awareness asks, wait, is this churn actually a bad thing?
Oh, wow.
Right. Awareness might reveal that by shedding those specific mid-market clients, the company is finally freed up to pivot entirely to enterprise-level software, which was the long-term goal anyway. Awareness recognizes that the crisis is actually an opportunity disguised as a failure.
And this is so crucial because Pathak emphasizes that this hierarchy is not just a linear ladder where you climb to awareness and just stay there. It's a circular living system, right?
Yep.
Awareness doesn't just sit at the top. It surrounds the entire hierarchy.
Exactly.
Your level of organizational awareness dictates what data you even choose to collect in the first place.
And this raises a really important question for corporate governance, which Pathak explores in depth.
Wow.
There is a massive boardroom implication here regarding what we actually choose to measure. Boards of directors today receive mountains of risk reports, compliance metrics, KPI dashboards. But if you look at the most consequential disruptions in recent history, Things like the global supply chain collapse during the COVID-19 pandemic or the intricate cascading failures of the 2008 financial crisis. They rarely, if ever, appeared on those executive dashboards.
Because the dashboards are entirely programmed to track what the company already knows to look for. You literally cannot put a metric on a dashboard for a crisis you haven't structurally imagined yet.
Precisely.
So a company can invest millions of dollars in the most advanced AI dashboards to monitor known variables, but they suffer from this fatal organizational awareness gap because they spent absolutely zero time questioning if they're even looking at the right dashboard to begin with.
Traditional corporate governance focuses almost exclusively on monitoring past performance. Awareness-centered governance, on the other hand, focuses on aggressively challenging current assumptions. If you only review performance metrics, you are guaranteed to only discover existential problems after the damage is already done.
So if our meticulously designed dashboards are actively blinding us, how do we actively look for what we cannot see? I mean, to combat this organizational awareness gap, Pathak provides a really practical map to categorize our blind spots before they destroy us. He breaks awareness down into 4 domains.
He does, and this is an evolution of a classic strategic framework, but he's deeply updated it for the AI age and the speed of modern disruption. The 4 domains are known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns.
Let's explore how these actually play out in a corporate environment. First, the known knowns.
This is your organizational comfort zone. It encompasses your established revenue streams, your daily operational processes, your current customer demographics.
Stuff you do every day?
Exactly. This is exactly where the expertise trap we discussed earlier lies. Because you manage these known elements so well and they generate reliable profits, you simply stop questioning if they will still matter in 5 years.
It's the Nokia hardware division. They knew how to make a phone, and they knew they were good at it, and they just stayed there.
Right.
Then we moved to the second domain, known unknowns.
This is the strategic frontier. These are the variables you actively know you do not understand yet. It might be the impact of pending government regulations, the specs of an unreleased competitor product, or how a new technology like quantum computing will eventually affect your encryption.
Okay.
And Pathak makes a vital point here. In corporate culture, saying we do not know is often treated as a weakness. But in awareness-centered leadership, acknowledging a known unknown is a profound strategic strength.
Right, because if you know you have a gap in your knowledge, you can actually allocate R&D budget to research it. You can hire outside experts. It's a manageable risk.
Exactly.
But then we hit the third domain, and I think this is where most massive corporations slowly rot from the inside out. Unknown knowns. Pathak calls this hidden intelligence.
This is perhaps the most underappreciated and frankly tragic domain in business. It's the silent intelligence problem. This phenomenon occurs when the crucial business-saving knowledge actually exists somewhere inside your organization, but the executive leadership is completely oblivious to it.
This is the classic scenario where the frontline retail workers or the customer service reps on the phones or even your external supply chain partners, they totally know that a core system or a new product is actively failing. They see the disaster unfolding in real time.
They live it every day.
Exactly. But the C-suite has absolutely no idea because the corporate hierarchy is so rigid, the reporting structures are so filtered, or there's just zero psychological safety for a lower-level employee to raise a red flag.
Right.
The organization as a collective entity knows the truth, but the actual decision-makers don't.
The tragedy of the unknown known is that the problem isn't a lack of information, the information is abundant. The problem is a structural lack of awareness at the top. When leadership creates an environment where bad news is punished, they basically guarantee that hidden intelligence will remain silent until the company collapses.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to talk about the fourth and final domain, which sounds like an absolute paradox. Unknown unknowns. This is the domain of black swans, of pure, unadulterated disruption. I mean, how can a listener or a CEO possibly prepare for something they literally cannot even imagine? It sounds entirely impossible.
It does sound impossible if you're operating from an industrial age management mindset. But Pathak introduces what he calls the preparedness principle to address this exact paradox.
Okay, what is that?
Well, traditional management philosophy is obsessed with trying to predict the future, but prediction fundamentally assumes a level of certainty and stability that simply no longer exists.
Right. You can't predict a global pandemic or the sudden overnight launch of a technology that just rewrites your entire industry.
Exactly. Awareness-centered leadership, however, abandons the illusion of prediction and instead seeks preparedness. Preparedness fundamentally assumes uncertainty.
Okay, I like that distinction.
You don't survive a true black swan event by predicting its arrival perfectly. You survive it because you deliberately built highly flexible organizational structures, maintained deep financial resilience, and fostered a highly adaptable, psychologically safe culture before the disruption ever appeared on the horizon.
So instead of trying to be a corporate psychic who wastes all these resources guessing the weather of the future, you just focus your energy on building a highly adaptable, resilient ship. A ship that can survive any storm, even the ones that don't show up on the meteorological radar.
That's a great way to put it. The organizations that thrived during the sudden shift to remote work in 2020 weren't necessarily the ones who predicted a global health crisis.
No, nobody predicted that.
Right. They were the ones who were culturally and structurally ready to pivot their operations the moment they realized the reality of the world had changed. Their awareness allowed them to abandon their old assumptions instantly.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? We've covered these massive, high-level strategic frameworks, from the evolution of human knowing to the psychological traps of expertise, all the way to mapping out the 4 domains of corporate blind spots. But how does this apply to an individual's daily reality, whether they're running a Fortune 500 company or just trying to navigate their own career in the AI era?
The core takeaway from Pathak's work is that every single one of us accumulates what the book calls awareness debt.
Awareness debt.
Yes. Just like a software engineering team accumulates technical debt when they take shortcuts and defer maintaining their foundational code, individuals and organizations accumulate awareness debt every single time they defer challenging their successful assumptions.
So every time you rely on an old assumption simply because it worked yesterday, without pausing to ask if the fundamental rules of the world have changed today, you're basically taking out a high-interest loan against your own future adaptability.
Exactly.
You might get away with it for a while, but eventually that debt comes due. And in the modern era, it usually comes due in the form of massive, irreversible disruption.
To summarize the overarching theme of this entire philosophy, knowledge is what explains the reality we can currently see. But awareness is the discipline of exploring the limits of that explanation. It's the active, sometimes very uncomfortable practice of constantly searching for what you're missing, rather than just confirming what you already know.
It's realizing that the game of chess you spent your entire life mastering might actually be a game of poker now,
Right.
and having the humility to put down the pawn and pick up a deck of cards.
Exactly right.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into the matrix of awareness, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to really mull over as you go about your day. Imagine an incredibly sophisticated AI native competitor, or perhaps even just a younger AI native version of yourself, is quietly analyzing your current career trajectory, your business model, or even just your daily workflow routines. What invisible assumptions are you clinging to right now simply because they made you successful in the past? What dashboards are you staring at that are measuring the wrong game? And most importantly, how quickly would that AI native competitor exploit those invisible assumptions to completely disrupt you? Stay curious, keep questioning your dashboards, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.